This episode of Musical Hell is brought to you by Midnight Musicals. Welcome to the podcast Musical Underground. Thank you. Season's greetings, mortals. Welcome to another session of the Infernal Court in Musical Hell. I'm Diva, your judge, jury, executioner, and tormented soul trapped in a time loop forced to endure the same thing over and over and over and... Sorry. It's just our next offender. Saving Santa will do that to a demon. No wonder some people think there's a war on Christmas. Half the stories about the holiday involve it being stolen or hijacked or otherwise threatened by anything from moderately inclement weather up to and including one of our local emissaries. This generally forgotten 2013 direct-to-video movie, another offering by future residents the Weinsteins, is yet another example of the breed. And while it does try to put a different twist on the formula, the results... well, let's examine the case of Saving Santa to see where they went wrong. We begin in a very traditional holiday fashion with a cute little moppet writing a letter to Santa and singing about his Christmas wish. This will be relevant eventually, but not for a while yet, so we move quickly on to our main character, Bernard, a little elf with big ambitions and a tendency towards haplessness.
No pants!
Yes, it's going to be one of those Christmas movies. Sin number one is that whatever audience this movie is aiming for, it's not working. It's neither smart enough for adults nor fun enough for kids, and the latter especially may have a hard time paying attention to the convoluted turns the plot takes. The humor isn't elf bowling levels of abysmal, but it is definitely in the same vein with lots of missing pants, groin shots, and reindeer poop.
You fly around the world behind 8 well-fed reindeer as long as I have, and you get used to getting hit with a few warm brownies.
The poop stuff is semi-justified in that Bernard's current occupation is cleaning out the stables for the sleigh team, but his dream is to be an inventor. On this particular Christmas Eve, he's racing to present his latest prototype to the board at Santec, who are a little weary of his efforts. The previous year's demonstration, a memory zapper designed to neuralize little kids who catch Santa at work, didn't go over so well.
Quick, zap.
Who are you? And why are you wearing that ridiculous elf costume?
But the bushy-mustached elf in charge of the hearing decides to give Bernard another chance, and it seems Bernard is still into messing with people's brains as his new device creates a projection of the wearer's happiest Christmas memory. And it actually works, until Bushy Mustache is embarrassed by his joyride in Santa's sleigh, one thing leads to another and the entire North Pole suffers a blackout.
No.
After being kicked to the curb, Bernard returns to the stables, where he's met by his buddy Blitzen. Blitzen wears another of Bernard's inventions, a translation box that, unfortunately, only works in reverse. Basically, he's like the dogs in Up, only limited to the one joke of not being able to understand a single thing he's saying. But when Santa shows up at the stable, he's impressed, because, being Santa, language barriers aren't really a thing for him. Santa gives Bernard a little pep talk and shares with him the movie's MacGuffin, the Time Globe, a time travel device which enables Santa to complete his world-spanning gift-giving mission in a single night.
You remind me of the elf that invented this. Oh, he was a lot like you, though a bit older, if I remember.
I think the implication is the inventor is Santa himself, but there's never really a payoff for it. Fun fact, though, although in the US version Santa is voiced by Tim Conway, the original British track cast Tom Baker in the role. So, points for that inside joke. All that's missing is a comment about Santa's toy sack being bigger on the inside. As with the flux capacitor, how the time globe works is unimportant, but the rules under which it does work are. Events in the past can be added to but cannot be altered, and under no circumstances can you interact with your other self, as that would be bad.
I'm fuzzy on the whole good-bad thing.
So is this movie, but let's move on. Santa's speech reinvigorates Bernard, as demonstrated by sin number 2, prospects.
That's when the future me will turn to them and
Frozen 2 did it better. Martin Freeman's not a bad singer, but the generically peppy music isn't helping him. Neither are the lyrics.
Even a reindeer with a sleigh in tow can beat a crow in the air.
What?
Bernard is so wrapped up in his big number that he doesn't notice a large airship descending and snatching up elves from the street. This blimp carries shipping empire tycoon Neville Baddington. And if the name wasn't enough to tip you off to his villainy, Tim Curry descending to make a holiday meal of the North Pole scenery should do the trick.
Oh, it wouldn't be Christmas without complete chaos and utter panic.
Bernard avoids capture through the old nobody here but us set pieces routine, assisted by a timely intervention from a feisty female elf and Neville being more interested in taking Santa to the workshop for interrogation. So Bernard is able to escape to the stable, but the guards are hot on his heels for reasons that won't make sense until later, so he's in a pretty tight spot.
I just wish I had time.
Bernard isn't entirely sure how the time globe works, but he's able to fumble his way enough to send him back to that morning and into another poop joke.
Oh, come on, I just cleaned up in here.
Bernard finds Blitzen, who isn't thrilled about being woken up with crazy stories about time travel. Except, wouldn't Blitzen know about the time globe since he's on Santa's sleigh team? Whatever, Bernard proves he's telling the truth by running the risk of doing the only thing Santa told him he shouldn't do.
I told you.
Bernard tells Blitzen to find Santa, but Blitzen ends up leading him to the local pancake house, much to Bernard's frustration. But Blitzen insists that Santa is nearby, so Bernard uses the flying reindeer to get an aerial. I'm kidding. He climbs on top of a stack of ridiculously precarious pancakes and rants like a crazy person about the imminent doom that's about to befall the North Pole. Because absolutely everyone in this movie is an idiot, and Bernard is the biggest idiot of the lot. All Bernard succeeds in doing is alerting Santa's Secret Service detail, and while they cart him away, he tells Blitzen to warn his previous self to warn Santa that he's in danger, which we know won't happen because, unlike Bernard, we were paying attention when Santa said he wouldn't be able to change the past. So Bernard winds up being grilled by the Christmas Defense Department.
You know how Santa knows when you're sleeping and knows when you're awake? That's us!
Bernard's interrogators are Agent Snowy, played by Noel Clarke in the movie's second Doctor Who connection, and Agent Shiny, the feisty female elf from before. Neither of them believe Bernard's story about time travel either, until he pulls a Connecticut Yankee and foretells the blackout right before it happens.
What's going on?
Any minute now.
It turns out that the blackout caused a temporary failure in the North Pole's cloaking device, which is bad because at that moment Neville is hovering above in his airship searching for Santa. His mother, Vera, is rather fed up with Neville's obsession with the fat man and warns him that if this quest of his doesn't yield results by midnight, he's disinherited. But Neville remains committed to his life's work.
I will find it, Mummy, and all of the secrets it holds. Then QAD will truly be the quickest package delivery service in the world.
So yeah, that's our villain's motivation. They want to steal Santa's secrets so they can corner the market on same-day shipping. Apart from not being a very compelling plot point, I can't help but think they're going to way too much trouble. I mean, why bother tracking down the mythical avatar of Christmas when you can just force your drivers to pee in bottles between route stops? The blackout also gives Bernard a chance to escape by... Look, he just does, and he evades the CDD by stuffing himself in a mailbox and riding up an elevator. See, the mailbox was sitting on a trapdoor for the elevator, or maybe it is the elevator car itself, and never mind, even if I try to explain it, it doesn't make sense. Just know that he winds up back outside in time to see his previous self being kicked to the curb and realizing what everyone else figured out 5 minutes ago.
They found the North Pole because of me.
Heartbroken, Bernard gets another song with bad lyrics, although this one does provide the movie's first real bit of cleverness, as he ends up singing counterpoint with his earlier I Want song.
Even a flea, what kind of an prospects doesn't realize when the world's gone wrong?
And speaking of things in the movie that aren't half bad, here's Tim Curry doing what Tim Curry does best. Balls to the wall crazy!
Surely not. Only a madman would think we will surely crash and explode into fiery bits and pieces if we flew straight up.
Bernard V.2 eludes capture in the same manner as Bernard V.1, even though this puts him in danger of being seen by himself. Get used to it, he does it a lot. But he gets away without destroying the space-time continuum and is able to eavesdrop on Neville's villain rant to the captive Santa, which reveals that Neville was a big fan of Santa until he decided the jolly old elf was holding out on him.
How do you make it all around the world in one night? Huh? Or fit all of those presents into one bag? Huh? Every year, I wrote to you asking for the answers, and all you ever gave me were toys.
Basically, Neville is a cross between Elon Musk and a Neil deGrasse Tyson tweet, which to be fair is a pretty evil combination. While Neville takes a call from Mumsy, Bernard approaches Santa, explaining that he plans to go back in time again to stop himself from giving his presentation at Santec and causing the blackout. Even though, as Santa reminds him, the past can't be rewritten. But before he can get that through Bernard's thick skull, the goons spot him, so it's time for another chase scene.
I'm going back, Santa!
I swear, half this movie is chase scenes or variations on previous chase scenes, and it gets really old. Bernard 2 winds up back at the stable, inadvertently bringing the guards to Bernard 1's door, and long story short, he jumps into the field of the time globe just as it goes off. So, for those of you keeping score, we now have 2 Bernards from the future running around while the original Bernard goes about his morning, and we get to go through this entire sequence again. I mean, sweet Lucifer, Back to the Future 2 didn't get this elaborate, and that had an entire scene where Doc Brown laid out what exactly was going on. I can't tell if the writers were overly enamored with the whole Santa delivers gifts via time travel idea, or if they couldn't think of enough story to build around it and just kept repeating until they got to feature length, but this is a movie that could have used a bit more simplicity. A bit of slapstick ensues as Bernard 3 tries to snatch the memory projector from his nightstand but fails as he has to elude both of his previous selves, and when that fails he tries to stall himself by switching a train sign so it will hit him in the head, while trying to run ahead of himself on the train he originally missed, and no movie, I will not go back to look for the third Bernard in the opening sequence because you have not earned a rewatch. It all ends up fruitless as Blitzen tackles him thinking he's Bernard 1, because remember, Bernard 2 told him to warn Bernard 1. The more I try to explain this movie, the more my horns hurt.
Oh, great. It happened again.
Bernard is frustrated by his inability to change the past. You know, the thing Santa explicitly said he wouldn't be able to do, twice, and sends Blitzen away in a bit of self-indulgent moping before being recaptured by the Christmas defense guys.
Thought you could get away, did you? Well, Bernard, if you are indeed innocent, how do you explain this?
Agent Snowy now believes Bernard caused the blackout deliberately, and when Neville's blimp descends, the entire agency devolves into panic because this is well above their usual routine of spying on sleeping children. Bernard is still in his self-pitying funk, so Shiny bolsters his confidence with sin number 7, sink or swim.
Stop and think, 'cause you know what's in store, and an elf with that much vision is an elf worth fighting for.
You have to understand, Shiny has had maybe 5 minutes of screen time this entire movie. Her name's barely even been mentioned at this point, and I can count on one claw the lines of dialogue she's had with Bernard. And suddenly she's decided he's the great hope of the North Pole and the one who can single-handedly save Christmas? Where's she getting any of that from?
Think back over everything, there has to be a clue in there.
Even the way the character is animated makes me feel like she doesn't quite believe what she's saying. This is one of the most thankless love interest roles I've ever seen in a musical, and I cannot begin to tell you how long that particular list is. The upshot of all this is that Bernard realizes that in order to stop Neville, they need to reawaken his Christmas spirit, and since a trio of ghosts is hard to come by on such short notice, he needs his memory thing. A little bit of inspirational chorus gets the assorted agents on board, and they go out to save the day.
Hurry, everyone! Blend in!
Nothing here.
By doing this bit again, only with a little no-homo to make it extra unappealing. Even Tim Curry's villain ranting is losing its luster by this point. Anyway, Bernard 3 ends up ziplining from the top of the Santec building and also saving Shiny, who stayed behind to throw the snowball at Neville so he wouldn't find Bernard 1. Meanwhile, Bernard 2 is careening around in his little toy car, and you know what?
Cheers!
So, to make a long story short... Too late! Bernard 3 winds up in the stable with the memory thing just as Bernards 1 and 2 use the time thing, so at least we're out of that particular loop. Neville barges in just as Bernard is fiddling with the sleigh's controls and orders him to be captured and the sleigh brought into the town square, where he gives a speech that even Tim fucking Curry can't make badass.
As of this moment, Christmas is outsourced.
Bernard interrupts Neville's gloat by claiming to be Santa's chief inventor and offering to unlock the secrets of the sleigh in exchange for Santa's freedom, revealing that he switched out the memory thing for the time thing.
I'm gonna need a volunteer.
Me!
You're fired.
Okay, that was almost worth sitting through the rest of the movie. 3 times. To absolutely nobody's surprise, we find out that Neville was the cute, innocent tyke from the prologue, and everyone sings along with his childhood wish in a scene that kind of loses its effect due to Neville wearing what looks like an umbrella hat made from a giant jellyfish.
I will just all come true today.
We also learn Santa never received Neville's letters as Vera tossed them out, though how Neville's seeing this when he wasn't around to remember it, I don't know. And when Vera herself arrives, he declares his refusal to exploit Santa's magic for profit. I know villains getting their 11th hour change of heart is a time-honored Christmas trope, but I'm not quite buying it in this case. But that's nothing compared to how Vera gets taken down.
Where am I?
So yeah, apparently Bernard still had the memory erasing device that featured in the flashback way at the beginning of the movie and hasn't been seen or mentioned since, and Blitzen knew where it was and was able to go get it in time for Bernard to sneak it to Neville with a quick explanation of what it does, and sweet Lucifer, I can't with this movie anymore. Suffice it to say, Neville uses Vera's amnesia to force her into retirement, apologizes for the whole misunderstanding, and Christmas cheer abounds as Bernard gets a kiss from his trophy love interest and a ride along with Santa as part of his official Santec orientation.
Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
Like a lot of stories that deal with the question of how the whole Santa thing works, Saving Santa does come up with some clever answers. But it never figures out anything interesting to do with them. Or rather, it can't do anything interesting because it's hobbled by its basic precept of the past being fundamentally unalterable. If nothing ever changes, then what's the point? What's the point? No matter, it leads to a tiresome experience, so the Court of Musical Hell condemns the producers to 24-hour Christmas marathons of Rhapsody Street Kids Believe in Santa. So let it be recorded. This session of the Infernal Court in Musical Hell is now adjourned. What's the point?